The American Scholar by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Themes, Summary and Analysis. Hello and welcome to the discourse. We are discussing the essays of Ralph Waldo Emerson. On August 31st, 1837, Emerson was invited to address the gathering of scholars of Phi Beta Kappa Society of Howard College at the First Parish in Cambridge, Massachusetts. A society of students with unusually high grades in their respective courses. His first essay, Nature, was published in 1836 and it had created enough ripples in favor of Emerson. It was expected that his speech will be impressive, and so it was. Later on, this speech was published as an essay and was titled The American Scholar. The speech was offered to address the group of the best students of one of the best institutes of America, and it proved to be so impressive that famous poet and a physician Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. declared this speech as the Declaration of Independence of American intellectual life. Other critics claimed the speech as the first clarion of an American literary renaissance. The American literary renaissance period began in 1830 and continued till the Civil War. American Renaissance is a synonym of American Romanticism, and it was closely related to the Transcendentalist movement. The main aim of American Renaissance was a wave of literary nationalism in America. Emerson's essay Nature and this speech turned essay, The American Scholar, became the basic structure of Transcendentalist movement and the American literary Renaissance. Themes of the American Scholar. Before we may analyze this essay, let us first discuss the major themes of the American Scholar. It was the 60th year of America as an independent nation, and yet there were enough issues and problems to be solved. The abolitionist movement was gaining momentum, and the issue of women's suffrage was also rising up. At that time, all the members of Phi Beta Kappa Society were male students because females were not allowed to have higher education, and scholarships were exclusively reserved for men. Despite being a new independent nation, America was still in the shadows of British and European past. The major theme of this essay was to raise the inspiration of independent and original American way of thinking, that is, nationalism. Other major theme was social unity and equality. Emerson also offered an allegory to emphasize on the social unity. He mentioned that we are all fragments, as the hand is divided into fingers of a great living being, which is mankind itself. The third important theme of this essay was connection with the nature. Emerson believed that man and nature must have a harmonious relationship, and the best way to attain knowledge is to search and attain it through nature. Summary of the American Scholar. Emerson begins his speech with greetings to the president and members of Phi Beta Kappa Society. He then mentions how this gathering is very different from the athletic and dramatic contests of ancient Greece, the poetry contests of Middle Ages, and the scientific academic conferences of 19th century Europe. Emerson emphasizes on the necessity of an independent American intelligentsia which is free from the influences of European past. He then announces that the theme of his American Scholar is not some individual, but an abstract ideal. Emerson then offers an allegory by telling an ancient fable. He says that once there was only a man who was then divided into many men to make life easy, as the society could work more efficiently with many men. He mentions the importance of social distribution, but soon he says that society now has been divided into so many subdivisions that it no longer fulfills the purpose of making life easy. Rather, it produces hindrances against the efficient working of the society. He mentions that the scholar, being the part of society, also suffer these hindrances, and the former man thinker becomes a mere thinker. Emerson then tries to offer a way to solve this problem of degeneration of the American scholar by emphasizing on the correct manner of how a true scholar should be educated and what should be the duties of a true scholar. He explains that nature is the first and the best teacher as it instructs the individuals who observe the nature. He says that an observer can easily envision the similarities between the nature and his own mind. He says that both nature and the scholar's spirit are boundless. They are beginningless and endless. They are eternal. Emerson mentions that the other similarity between the nature and scholar is the order. The scholar mind, when sees chaotic infinite sets of reality and facts, he begins to classify, distinguish and categorize them, to compare them, measure them and to offer distinction between them. Finally, the scholar mind succeeds in finding the order within the infinite sets of the reality. Similarly, a man can understand the natural laws and make better use of them. Emerson emphasizes that both the nature and the scholar's soul are similar, parallel structures, and they originate from the same one root. He suggests that the phrases know thyself and study nature are both same, as they mean the same. Emerson then suggests that the second influence on the mind of a scholar is that of past learning, that is, the influence of the books. Emerson explains that books are the collection of learning of the past. He accepts that books transform and collect mere facts as virtual thoughts. However, he says that often these virtual thoughts are half-truths, as each generation of past offers only the partial truths that are biased by the society's standards of that time. He says that while books are important, excessive indulgence with the past learning will prove to be dangerous. He emphasizes that each age should create its own truths. He also mentions that overindulgence with books often turns the scholar away from the original thinking, and they become mere parrots and bookworms. He offers the example of the English dramatic poets who were Shakespeareized for 200 years and continued to copy the works of Shakespeare and failed to produce any new original text of considerable importance. Emerson then offers the example of fig tree that can fertilize the other fig trees. He says that one original author can inspire others. Emerson accepts that books are important for certain studies, such as studies of science, mathematics, and history. However, he says that efforts should be made by the institutes to promote practical learning rather than the rote memorization of texts. Emerson accepts that good books have their importance because they influence a fertile human mind, but he says that reading should be critical and inquiring, which is often not the case. Emerson then emphasizes on the action on the principles that a scholar learns and reads. He suggests that actions are secondary to the thought processing, yet actions are very important. Also, it would be cowardly to not to act on the principles that you learn and believe. Emerson then discusses the differences between recent actions and the past actions. He says that the current or recent acts remain entangled with present feelings, and then the mind takes time to filter them in gathering the definite thoughts. On the other hand, the past actions have already transformed to the definite knowledge. He then praises the observant scholar who learns through laborious actions. He claims that such a scholar is superior to a bookworm scholar who continues to remain dependent on the words and thoughts of others, of the people of past. After explaining the superior scholar, Emerson emphasizes on the duties of a true scholar or his obligations towards the society. The first duty of a scholar is to develop an unflinching self-trust and a fertile mind that may work as the repository of knowledge and wisdom for the benefits of the society at large. Emerson says that it is difficult because it takes a lot of tedious efforts, solitude, and hardship. The second duty of a true scholar is to remain ready for sacrifices of lesser pleasures to attain success and ability. He mentions the example of two astronomers who spent their time in solitary observing the space to discover things that would later benefit the mankind. Emerson says that the only reward for such true scholars is to find consolation in exercising the highest functions of human nature. The third and last duty of a scholar, as mentioned by Emerson, is to be independent in thinking and judgment and ignore the public biases in favor of the unadulterated truth. The true scholar is obligated to preserve the knowledge of the past and to communicate and offer the noblest, the truest thoughts and feelings to the public. Emerson says that a true scholar is dedicated to discover the universal ideas that are held by a universal mind, and hence a scholar can communicate with people of all classes and ages. He mentions a scholar as he is the word's eye, he is the word's heart. Emerson says that though a scholar leads a life of solitude, a reclusive and benign life, it is necessary for him to be brave, to be able to put his observed and discovered ideas truthfully in front of the public, and for this he must have enough self-trust. Emerson says that for a scholar, the noblest ambition is to improve human nature by improving their own individual nature. At the end of the essay, Emerson praises the views of English and German romantic poets like William Wordsworth and Goethe, as he claims that they find inspiration for their works in the lives of common people. He praises romantic writers who, instead of considering royal and aristocratic subjects for philosophical literature, look for inspirations in the lives of lower class working people. Emerson then advocates American scholars to throw away the European mantle that they have cloaked over their personalities and to create original, truly American work and literature. He also mentions and praises the doctrines of Swedish philosopher Emanuel Swedenborg. So this was the summary of Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay, The American Scholar, and it makes it clear how influential his original speech was. At the end of this essay, he mentions the romantic ideal of the American individual. We will continue to discuss other works of Ralph Waldo Emerson in the next video of this series. Please stay connected with the discourse. Thanks and